Okay, so got a really nice, quick, easy, simple project to be able to do today. We are moving house soon. We don't quite know exactly when, but hopefully fairly soon. And one of the things that we know we're going to need to do in the new house is tile the backsplash to the sink. Because for some reason there's no backsplash. Not quite sure why, but it's one of those things. This is not how to tile a backsplash. This is how to make little placemats, trivets, I guess trivets more than placemats, out of tiles. So, my wife has been online, been to various different tile shops online, and has found lots of pretty porcelain tiles. If you haven't seen the traditional way to make these, by the way, look up online how to make traditional tiles. I was just blown away by it. They are quite stunning how they actually make these patterns. Yeah, we've got a few different designs, and some places will send you samples for free. Some places will charge you a couple of pounds, but it's a really nice way to be able to make interesting trivets that are completely unique to you and that you can use around the home for whatever you want. So you could do, if you've got tiny ones, you could use them for coasters. If you've got big ones, you can use them for trivets. And all you're gonna need is the tiles, you're gonna need some cork, and you're gonna need some glue. So the cork I'm using is 3mm cork roll. I got it from Amazon. You can get loads and loads and loads, and it's not that expensive. The glue that I'm going to use is going to be an impact contact adhesive. So this is EvoStick 528 impact contact adhesive. And it is a really effective glue. That contact adhesive doesn't work by letting two pieces set together. You put it on, you let it set, and then you push them together, and once they contact, they stick. So it actually makes working times much easier, and you don't have to worry about trying to sort of clamp things or anything like that. So I'm going to set up a camera to look over what I'm doing, and I'll talk you through it. So just before we start, if the tiles do have any printing on them showing the patterns or colors, this can be really easily removed with nail varnish remover or acetone, as I was using here, just to make sure that they don't show up on the final piece. So lay out your tiles on your cork. You will see that one tile here is overhanging the edge slightly, but I'll come on to that later. And mark out the edges, just giving yourself a little bit of overlap so that you can easily make sure you can trim them up later. Then take a sharp knife and cut your cork to all your marks that you've made so that you've got all of your backing pieces ready for assembly. It's a really good idea just to make sure that you actually store the piece of cork that you've cut out for each tile with the tile itself so that you don't end up mismatching and suddenly ending up with the wrong size at the end of it. I didn't quite have enough space on the cork for this last tile, so what I decided to do was essentially cut two pieces that will create the same overlap on each side. And I'm going to make sure that the lines of them are really nicely lined up. You should be able to glue it without any issues, so just make sure you use as much as possible without any wastage. I'm going to be using a sacrificial brush to do all my gluing. This brush will not be able to be salvaged at the end, but I get a big pack of them off Amazon and they're really useful just to have some spares. But equally, you can just use the glue spreader that comes with the tin of glue. This does make it a little bit difficult to get actually into all of the grooves on the bottom of the tile if it has grooves, but it works really well if you need it. So spread the glue liberally on both surfaces. And essentially, like I said, this glue works by when you put them together, it just sticks to itself. Remember, this is a solvent-based glue, so it is quite potent. Make sure either do it outside, or if you're doing it indoors like I did, make sure you do it in a well-ventilated area. You'll see that as it sets, it becomes less and less shiny, becomes more matte, and then gradually it will get to the point where you can touch it and it's not sticky or wet at all. If you're touching it and it still feels a bit wet, leave it for a little while longer and it will get really nice and dry. Then when you put the pieces together, they'll stick immediately. When it comes to sticking them together, just line up the edges and push them into place. Be careful, like I said, it does stick to itself so easily that if you get it in the wrong place initially, it will try to stick to itself. And if you push it into place and then discover you've got it wrong, you're not going to be able to get that off without tearing all the cork to bits. Once you've got it in place, then just give it a really good push down and rub all of the edges in. Make sure it's well bonded across the entire piece. And then just continue with the rest of your tiles, the rest of your cork, just to make sure that everything is beautifully stuck together. For the last one, where the two pieces were separate, exactly the same thing. Spread the glue all over them, and then when it comes to gluing them, do one from one edge and then line up the centers and put the other edge on. You'll find that you get a join that is so smooth you might not even really notice it's there. If you are getting the glue on your fingers, you can really easily just give them a good rub. It's almost like that, you know, the glue that sticks credit cards or aftershave samples in magazines. It will just rub off your fingers, and worst case scenario, bit of fairy liquid. If you haven't protected your surface, a little bit of acetone will just clean up any residue left on the table. Then it's time to trim, and get a sharp knife and work around the edges, pushing away from you and away from the cork towards the tile edge. Essentially, we're using the tile edge as a backstop so we don't tear any of the cork off. Do be aware that tile edge, where it is quite sharp and quite abrasive, will scratch up whatever knife you're using. So either use a knife you don't mind scratching up, or maybe use a craft blade or something along those lines. Just be careful with sharp knives. Continue this for all your tiles, just working around the edges. If a little bit of it tears, it's not a major problem. Tidy it up as best you can, but you'll be absolutely fine. When you've finished with all your cutting, you could essentially leave it just like that. This tile on the left, I have just cut and that's all I've done with it. But if you really want to tidy up the edges and make it look really nice and professional, the tile on the right, I've used a little bit of sanding paper just to chamfer the edges and really neaten them up nicely. What I used was a piece of 120 grit sandpaper and just pushed away from the cork towards that tile edge again at about a 45-degree angle. Make sure you're only going in one direction because, again, it is fairly easy to tear the cork off if you go the other direction. And our aim here is to neaten it up, not to make it look more rough. And there you have it. Here I've done 6 beautiful trivets, which my wife absolutely adores. I have to say this was a project that she had suggested, and actually I think they've worked really well. You could use whatever tiles you wanted, you can pick whatever designs you want. You don't need to get them from websites. You could always just go to Craft Market, you could find a reclaim yard, anything like that, and it will just provide you with some really unusual trivets to use in your own home or to use as gifts. The total cost for this entire project, it was about £8 to get the tiles. The cork was about £4 for the sheet, and then the glue was £15. So the glue is actually the most expensive thing, but I will be able to use this for a number of further projects. So actually it comes down to about £2 per trivet that we've made there. I hope you enjoyed that. I'd love to see what you make, so if you do make any, please send me links or pictures because I'd love to see what you've made. And thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.